to maybe Australian viewers or English viewers and all that. But yeah, Queen Elizabeth II passed away at age 96. She was gravely ill. She still had enough spryness to welcome the UK's new Prime Minister until the UK goes to the polls. But the simple fact is that Queen Elizabeth II passed away at age 96. Now, I am going to share some historical stats with her, stats about her with you. But first and foremost, I want to preface this part of the video by saying my personal stuff about Queen Elizabeth II and how I feel about it without having to look on Wikipedia for how big she was in the world. Simply put, Queen Elizabeth II reigning for 7 decades, 70 years. She was first ascending to the throne June 1952 after her father, King George VI. I can't remember off the top of my head without having used Wikipedia as a reference point. So she was the official monarch of Great Britain and the Commonwealth nations. And to live for 70 years, to be ruling anything for 70 years, any entity, any company, any project for 70 years is astounding. Lots of people aren't even 70 years old yet. To put this into context, my mom, Diane, was born November 1951. When Queen Elizabeth took the throne in June of 1952, my mom was only 7 months old at the time. My aunt, who I live with now, Aunt Marion, she wasn't even born yet. She was born in 1957. So that puts a lot of things into context. Lots of people haven't even known a British monarch, lived through a British monarch that is not named Queen Elizabeth II. And of course, you know, she set the record for longest reigning British monarch and longest reigning monarch in world history, I guess for a female, because there were some kings back in, I think Napoleon, no, not Napoleon, I think Louis the XIV was one of the longest reigning people. One of only 2 that have reigned longer than Queen Elizabeth. But I mean, to put 70 years on a throne is huge. You have to be the heir apparent at such a young age. Like, you have to take over for a country when you're like in your 20s for you to even hit 70 years. Or to be a child emperor. I know China did that and Egypt did that, but that was way back in the day. But the simple fact is 70 years is a long time. Also, let's put this into context as well. I'm 37. So Queen Elizabeth lasted almost twice as long as I've been alive. I mean, if she had died when I was 35. No, wait, 34. No. Yeah, something like, if she had died 3 years ago, she would have reigned double my lifespan. But yeah, no, it's just freaky. I know for certain that, I know my grandma Diamond, who's up in heaven right now, you know, was a admirer of Queen Elizabeth. She loved the Queen and all that. She had lots of stuff on Queen Elizabeth, her books and all that. She was a fan of the royals. In fact, at my cousin Melanie's wedding to Adam, she walked down the aisle and did the royal wave and all that. And Grandma was just almost 90 years old at the time. I love my grandma. I love my grandma dearly and all that. So yeah. And also another thing, comparing the Queen to my grandma, is that they both died at 96. Grandma Diamond was born in 1919 and then died almost a month after she turned 96 in April 2015. And the Queen's lasted longer than her by longevity. But yeah, that's a lot. That's a long life to live, 96 years. So I'm not going to read you the whole Wikipedia article. Obviously, it'd take like 2 hours. So anyway, she was born April 1926. I thought she was born in June, but I guess that was when she took the throne. But anyway, from April 1926 to September 2022. She was Queen of the UK and the other Commonwealth realms from February 6, 1952 till her death in 2022. I thought it was June when she got... Oh man, I made a dumb move. I thought it was June when she took the throne, but I guess it was February 1952. So my mom would have only been a couple months old. Shit. I apologize. Regardless, she served as Queen Regent of 15 um, realms. At the time, of course, it's the UK being England, Scotland, Northern Ireland. The Republic of Ireland is not part of the sovereign state. Antigua and Barbuda, Australia, Bahamas, Belize, Canada, Grenada, Jamaica, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, St. Kitts, Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Solomon Islands, and Tuvalu. So her reign of 70 years, 214 days is the longest of any British monarch and the longest record of any female head of state in history. So she was born as the first child of the Duke and Duchess of York, who would later be King George VI and Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. Her father got to the throne in 1936 because his brother King Edward VIII abdicated because he wanted to be closer to Wallis Simpson, who was an American divorcee. And they always say that, and a lot of the British royal watchers say, Americans ruin everything. Well, with the Wallis Simpson thing, I guess some of them actually did think that when Prince Harry was with Meghan Markle, who was American, it was a repeat of Wallis Simpson. But anyway, she was the heir presumptive. She was educated privately at home and took public duties during the Second World War, being in the auxiliary service and driving a tank. In November 1947, she married Philip Mountbatten, who was Prince of Greece and Denmark. Their marriage lasted 73 years till his death in April 2021. And they would have 4 children. The now King Charles III, Charles, Prince of Wales, Princess Anne, Prince Andrew, Duke of York, and Prince Edward, the Earl of Wessex. So anyway, she was 25 years old when her father died in February 1952. So she became the queen of 7 independent Commonwealth countries: the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. South Africa was part of the Commonwealth. Well, to be fair, I did a golf tournament for ASG Golf about the Commonwealth, and I said South Africa was not part of the Commonwealth. Well, Mr. Diamond, you have screwed up. Anyway, South Africa, Pakistan, and Ceylon, aka Sri Lanka. So she reigned as constitutional monarch through major political changes: the troubles in Northern Ireland, devolution in the UK, the decolonization of Africa, the UK's accession to the European communities, and withdrawal from the EU. She made many visits. She visited with 5 popes. She got her silver, golden, diamond, and platinum jubilees: 1977, 2002, 2012, and 2022, respectively. She was the second longest reigning sovereign in world history ever, and that's only behind Louis XIV of France. So anyway, she faced lots of criticism because of how her children's marriages broke down, her annus horribilis in 1992, her horrible year, 92, which I'll explain, and the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, in 1997. So Prince Charles is now King Charles III, and he actually held the record for longest wait to get on the throne at 70 years, because when he was born, he was there. So the longest reigning monarchs. So King Louis XIV reigned from 1643 to 1715, pardon, for 32 years, 110 days. Can you imagine? I wonder how long Louis XIV was king. Well, how old was he? He was king of France when he was 5 years old. That's how big it was. Elizabeth II. And number 3 is Thailand's Rama IX, who reigned for 70 years for Thailand, 1946 to 2016. Now, the question on everyone's list will be now, who's got the longest reign of anybody currently? Well, I don't know. I have no clue. I don't know who's now the longest reigning monarch now that Queen Elizabeth has passed. As I look down the list, I can't find anyone. I don't know who's next in line. Yeah, I don't know who's next in line for that thing. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So yeah, so Elizabeth was born April 1926 during the reign of her paternal grandfather, King George V. Her father, Prince Albert, was Duke of York, but later named King George VI, becoming the second son of the king. Her mother, Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, Duchess of York, was Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mother, was the youngest daughter of a Scottish aristocrat. So anyway, she was named Elizabeth after her mother. Well, she was called Lilibet by her close family. In fact, she was actually on the cover of Time in 1929, which was weird. She actually was cherished by her grandfather George V and called Grandpa England. And it recovered all that. Elizabeth only had one other sibling, Princess Margaret, who was born in 1930. Unfortunately, Princess Margaret would be under criticism as she wanted to marry Peter Townsend, who was in the English Navy Army, but also was divorced, and the Church of England refused to do it. Unfortunately, Queen Elizabeth had to put a stop to it because she owed it to her country under the Church of England rules and all that. Anyway, she looked pretty impressive. So Elizabeth was third in line of succession when her grandfather reigned the British throne, behind her uncle Edward and her own dad. She was not expected to be queen because Edward was still young and likely to marry and have children of his own, which meant that those kids would pass Elizabeth on the line of succession. Her grandfather died in 1936, and her uncle succeeded as Edward VIII. She would be second in line to the throne after her father. But surprisingly, that was when he decided to marry divorced socialite Wallis Simpson and abdicated for finding a constitutional crisis. So Elizabeth's father became king as he was George VI. Since Elizabeth had no other siblings, she was named heir presumptive. Now, if her parents did have a son, then he would be the heir apparent, and Elizabeth would be down the line. But they didn't have any kids other than Elizabeth and Margaret. So Elizabeth was the heir. All that. She was part of the Second World War efforts and all that. That was pretty impressive and all that. She, legend early, at age 14, made her first radio broadcast during a BBC children's thing, addressing children who had been evacuated from the cities because of the bombings. Saying, we are trying to do all we can to help our gallant sailors, soldiers, and airmen, and we are trying to bear our own share of the danger and sadness of war. We know, every one of us, that in the end all will be well. It was amazing and all of that. So Elizabeth, knowing her rules and all that, she would marry Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark in 1947. She actually ended up, there actually were second cousins once removed via King Christian IX of Denmark and third cousins through Queen Victoria. The controversy was huge. Philip had no financial standing, was foreign born, although he was a British subject who served in the Royal Navy during the Second World War, and had sisters who had married German noblemen with Nazi links and all that. A lot of the advisors think he would not be good enough for her. All that. He was a prince without a home or kingdom. Anyway, Philip renounced his Greek and Danish titles, converted from Greek Orthodoxy to Anglicanism, and adopted the style Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten, taking the surname of his mother's British family. And he was created Duke of Edinburgh. So anyway, Elizabeth would give birth to Prince Charles November 1948. All that. Princess Anne was born in 1950, before Elizabeth took the crown. But George VI had health problems, and Elizabeth would have to stand in for public events and all that. Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip were in Kenya February 1952 when they learned of George VI passing away, which meant Elizabeth would be ascending to the throne no matter what. She would still be called Elizabeth, but Elizabeth II. Scots were not too happy with her name and all that, but they would have all that. She still kept on the tradition of the House of Windsor and all that. And the surname Mountbatten-Windsor would be adopted for Philip and Elizabeth's male line descendants that don't have royal titles and all that. Right. So anyway, the coronation was held June of 1953, which was the first one to be majorly televised, and one of the first bits of TV that, through Kidoscope and through planes flying from Britain to Canada, within a few days, the pictures were there and all that. Yeah, Queen Mary did die March 24th, but the coronator went ahead because Mary had requested that. Queen Mary had insisted that. So the Commonwealth was big and all that. She went through lots of countries and all that. The Silver Jubilee looked good, but England at the time was going through a different ideology. The Sex Pistols actually had God Save the Queen, but it was a Elizabeth bashing song, and people just didn't think that they were in line with it. Lots of things had happened. Anyway, throughout the Silver Jubilee, she went through the Commonwealth tours and all that. By 1979, she had troubles because Anthony Blunt, who was surveyor of the Queen's pictures, actually was thought to be a communist spy, and her relative and in-law, Lord Mountbatten, was assassinated by the Provisional IRA. And people thought that the Queen thought she had little meaning, the crown had little meaning for Pierre Trudeau and all that. The problem was that Trudeau had his antics, Pierre did, sliding down banisters at Buckingham Palace and pirouetting behind the Queen's back in 1977 and all that. And, there was a lot of issues and all that. Of course, let's not forget that the Queen had her issues. In 1981, she was targeted by someone shooting at the Queen at close range. Thankfully, the shots were blanks, and her assailant was actually sentenced to 5 years in prison. But her composure and skill in controlling her mount were widely praised. Someone in New Zealand tried to assassinate her in 1981, but failed miserably. Anyway, she was happy and all that. In 1982, she actually had an intruder, Michael Fagan, who somehow was in the Queen's bedroom. But Michael Fagan, to his process, didn't want to hurt him. He wanted to have a word with Elizabeth II, and she remained very calm and all that. Security would be tightened heavily. So anyway, the Queen did a lot of things, all that. She had a lot of satire and all that. There was a charity game show called It's a Royal Knockout in 1987, which Prince Edward had edited. Was part of it. It just couldn't happen that way. Of course, 1992 was turbulent. Well, the 90s were turbulent. She had the Ruby Jubilee of 40 years, and she called her 1992 her Annus Horribilis, horrible year. Because many things happened. Prince Andrew, her second son, separated from Fergie, aka Sarah. Mauritius removed Elizabeth from head state. Her daughter, Princess Anne, divorced Captain Mark Phillips in April. And a large fire broke out of Windsor Castle in November. So there was a lot of issues and all that. And let's not forget about Charles and Diana's problems, which they kind of got in 1992. Anyway, yeah, Charles and Diana would divorce, and there were a lot of issues with it. But of course, one of the biggest mistakes she made was in 97, after Diana's death in Paris. The Queen was at Balmoral, where she died 25 years later. But anyway, Diana's two sons wanted to attend church, so the Queen and Duke of Edinburgh took them that morning. But afterwards, for many days, the royal couple shielded their grandsons from the press interest by keeping them at Balmoral, where they could grieve in private. But the royal family's silence and seclusion, and the failure to fly a flag at half-mast, caused public dismay. But the Queen would return to London and address the nation in a live broadcast on September 5th, the day before Diana's funeral, saying that, she expressed admiration for Diana and her feelings as a grandmother for the two princes. But a lot of the hostility still happened, but not as bad. All that. So anyway, yeah, she lived a lot of time. She actually talked to some people through Zoom during the COVID pandemic and all that. So yeah, she became the second longest reigning monarch, June of 2022, just this year, surpassing the King of Thailand. So September 6, 2022, at Balmoral, she appointed her 15th British Prime Minister, Liz Truss. The only time she did not receive a new Prime Minister at Buckingham Palace under her reign. So yeah, it was just amazing and all that. So at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, she passed away. A lot of people did not really like her and all that because of the stiff upper lip and all that. But anyway, yep. So her children, Charles III, now King Charles III, who's 73, married Lady Diana Spencer in 1981 and then divorced August 1996. Their children, Prince William and Harry, and of course Prince William's kids, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, and Prince Harry's two kids, Archie Mountbatten Windsor and Lilibet Mountbatten Windsor. Charles III has been married since April 9, 2005, my 20th birthday, to Camilla Parker Bowles, who was the cause of this whole issue with Charles and Diana in the first place. Her second child was Princess Anne, who is now 72. She married Captain Mark Phillips November 1973 and divorced him April of 92. And actually married in December 1992 to Timothy Lawrence. was a Royal Navy officer. I didn't know she'd be married again. But anyway, Princess Anne had 2 kids. Peter Phillips, who has 2 kids, Savannah and Isla, and Sarah Tyndall, who actually competed in the Olympics, like her mother, Princess Anne, with Mia, Lena, and Lucas. Prince Andrew, of course, you know the controversy of him, but anyway, February 1960, he was born, so he's 62. He was married July 1986 to Sarah Ferguson, aka Fergie, but divorced May of 1996. You know, Fergie had her things with Texas with the toe sucking and all that. He never remarried, and you know, he had 4 kids? Yes. No, sorry. 2 kids. Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, and they have one of their own. 1 kid of their own. And Prince Edward, Earl of Wessex, born March of 1964, so he's 58. He ended up being the last to be married, and that was June 1999 to Sophie Rees-Jones. They had 2 kids, Lady Louise Mountbatten-Windsor and James Mountbatten-Windsor. So, yeah. So Elizabeth II, bottom line, was the monarch of all monarchs. And you can take that to the bank. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Thanks for watching. Adieu.